Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, a new airline for dogs is called Bark Air. Can you top that?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. Pet jets, like net jets for pets.
Let me just tell you the story.
Warren Buffett's dog could own it.
I got on a flight the other day. There were 8 people. 8. 4 of them had pets, 3 dogs and a cat.
Really?
That's where we are in passenger aviation today.
Well, I would send my dog Jessie, I would send her down to West Palm to play Grove 23 if she had the opportunity. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the Cavs can JB Bickerstaff. The Rangers get shut out, and Tim Legler joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with the Dallas Mavericks grabbing Game 1 in Minnesota as Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving combined for 63 points, with each scoring at least 30. Home court advantage now shifts to Dallas. Minnesota's Anthony Edwards suggested his team was tired, particularly after that Game 7 in Denver 3 days previous. Wilbon, is that how you saw it?
Tony, you know what? While I don't want to hear that as an excuse when you get to the conference finals, particularly from a player that many of us are crowning as, one of the, players of the next generation, after he publicly challenges Kyrie Irving, says, I got him. And I don't want to hear you tired. I don't want to hear that. But he was tired. You could see it. I mean, physically, he was exhausted. I don't know if that comes from playing Game 7 in a Mile High. It's only a day difference between when those series ended. But look, this is a one-possession game. I don't want to get crazy with over-analysis here. Kyrie and Luka were great, in that order. Kyrie, and listen, when Kyrie Irving doesn't have stuff going on off the court, and you can just watch Kyrie Irving play basketball, my God, he's wondrous. He's not great. He's a wonder. And he can also explain it to you, can talk about exactly why he's doing what he's doing. He's surgical. He's so great at it without outside junk. And he's had none. He's just been great. He got them off to the start they needed. Luka was the finisher they needed in the fourth quarter. I think he had 15. And so, still with that, it was a one-possession game. So I'm just looking forward to more of this series. You can't say you're tired, but the kid was tired.
Okay, so this is exactly what I said to you yesterday when I told you why I thought Dallas would win this series. That the other team does not have the firepower of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving when they're both playing well. They accounted for either scoring or assisting on 88 of Dallas's 108 points. That is an incredibly formidable number. And as you're suggesting, they ham and egged it, because Kyrie Irving had 24 of his 30 in the first half, and then Luka Doncic had 15 of his 33 in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to get to Anthony Edwards. I'm not going to discuss whether he was tired or not. As a young man, I didn't think he would be tired. But I know you love him. And he's energetic and he's effervescent, and he is going to be a star if he isn't one already. But Mike, in the last 2 games, he has shot, I think, 12 for 40. That's 30%. That's not the winning ticket. And last night he took his shots from an average of 23 feet. And if you're clanging them, that's not the way to do it. The other team, Minnesota, can get back in this series very, very easily, but he's got to score more. He's that good. He's their most important player, and he's got to score more. Let's stay in the NBA.
He's got to lead them. Once you announce yourself as a leader, there's no receding.
You got to do it.
Not even for a game. Not when you get this deep. I suspect he will, though. I do.
Let's stay in the NBA. The Cleveland Cavaliers have fired JB Bickerstaff. Bickerstaff had coached the Cavs for the last 4+ seasons. The Cavaliers made the playoffs the last 2 seasons and the play-in the year before that. This season, they beat Orlando in the first round, then lost in 5 games to Boston. Bickerstaff's record was 170 and 159. Wilbon, what do you make of this firing?
It stinks. It stinks. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the 4 seed, they played Boston. They got a game. They pushed them. They don't even have Donovan Mitchell, their best player in games 4 and 5. And then, and they missing other players at other parts of the series, missing your starting center for that whole series, that second series against Boston. Come on now. I mean, look, Tony, you and I have been doing this long enough. We know there have been a million times where we said, wait a minute, what are you doing firing this guy? But that seems to take place more than ever in today's NBA, where players they're just not held accountable. And I thought this a couple of other times with firings with Darvin Ham. And I was critical of LeBron James, even in all his greatness. But come on now, with J.B. Bickerstaff, it's the same thing. Nobody's accountable. J.B. Bickerstaff's the guy. He was supposed to get them further in the playoffs than they got.
Yeah.
And it stinks.
Yeah. So you ask yourself, in a situation that is confusing, and this is confusing to me, unless they have a very specific guy in mind that they're going to go to, then I am confused by this. You ask yourself, well, what do they know that I don't know? And maybe what they know is that somebody on the team doesn't want to play for Bickerstaff anymore. And maybe he's an important player, and maybe they take that into consideration. Because when you look at, you lost to Boston. Boston's the #1 seed. They're a better team than Cleveland. You won one round. You went to Game 7. You won by 12 points. So you're not doing a bad job. You mentioned Ham and Frank Vogel as well. They lost their jobs because of what seemed to me one playoff series. This might have been one playoff series. That's too narrow a slice of the pie for me. One playoff series, especially considering how good Boston is. So I'm sort of baffled when things like this happen, because I think, look, Miami lost to Boston. They didn't fire Eric Spoelstra. No, so something's different, because Eric Spoelstra knows it. So, it's hard. This one is hard for me. It's hard for me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just these firings now, and we're going
like
to
the NHL, Mike.
The NHL, where they may fire you.
NHL.
In the NHL, they may fire you during the playoffs.
In the playoffs. That's right.
Nobody.
That's right. No job is safe in the NHL.
Now,
no job.
To the NHL, where the Rangers lost 3-0 at home to the Panthers in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. Florida was up only 1-0 deep into the third when Rangers goaltender Igor Shesterkin, failed to clear a puck, leading to essentially an own goal. It's the first time the Rangers have trailed in a playoff series this year, Tone. So how should they feel after last night's result?
Mike, this is about the worst result that the Rangers could have, being shut out at home. Bobrovsky, I think, saved 24 shots, and this is what Florida does. They limit the amount of shots that you get. They limited Boston to 21.6 shots per game, and 3 different times they held them under 20. The Rangers are a high-scoring team. They had the 3rd most goals, I believe, in the Eastern Conference. They're also a great home team. They were 30-11 at home. That was the best home record in the Eastern Conference. They got shut out. I mean, this is bad, pretty much as bad as you can get. I think the Rangers won their first 7 playoff games this year, and now they've lost 3 out of 4. I don't know if you watched. I watched most of the first period, and almost all the action, Mike, was in the Rangers' end. And it wasn't that Florida was shooting a lot, but they were just controlling everything. They totally stifled the Rangers, and it's a bad result. P.K. Subban yesterday said the Rangers have to win at home, and they open up with a loss.
Well, they do, Tony. And you mentioned Bobrovsky, who, first of all, the Rangers only produced, I think, 5 shots in the first period. Then they get a breakaway. Bobrovsky stops that. They hit a post, and then it's like, that's it. That's it for the Rangers offense. It was just not there. And so, I want to give some credit for that to the Panthers defense. I mean, they are smothering. They did that in the last round. They did it through one game. So maybe not all of this is the Rangers' inability. But let's go back to Shesterkin and trying to clear the puck. It was like he lost concentration for a second, or there was a change going on. It was like there was something that hasn't been fully explained yet that led to that second goal. And of course, the third goal was the empty netter. But I don't want to go too crazy on a Game 1 like you always point out. But the Panthers have a lot to do with the Rangers' inability to muster offense.
The Rangers averaged 3.5 goals a game through the playoffs, and they got none. Doesn't matter if you lose 8-0 or 1-0, you got none. Let's take a break. Coming up, how are the Mavericks suddenly good at defense? We're going to ask Tim Legler.
We'll also ask him for the degree of difficulty of the shot that Jaylen Brown hit to push the Pacers into that overtime they didn't want to be in Game 1.
By the way, Game 1 is the easiest to make up for. It is. But shut out at home, that's a thud. Let's get back into the NBA playoffs with our great friend ESPN NBA analyst Tim Legler. Let me start with this. One of the big changes that we have seen with the Dallas Mavericks is how well they play defense, because they didn't play any defense for a couple of years. What do you see when you watch them play defensively?
Well, now I see a quick, athletic team on the perimeter, and I see enough length on the court at all times to protect the rim. And that was a big thing because they had Derek Lively at the start of the year who was having an impact, but you can't keep him out there the entire game. They didn't have any size after that. And on the perimeter, the only real athlete they had that guarded people was Derek Jones. So that's not enough. And that's not enough also to put pressure on Kyrie and Luka to buy into this, right? Because they now stand out if they're not playing defense because they went out and they added P.J. Washington. They added Daniel Gafford. So now there's 4 guys with that mentality. Not only do they want to play defense, they're physically equipped to do it. So as a result, Kyrie and Luka are bought in now. They're playing harder defensively than I've ever seen either one of them. And when you do that, that's such a form of leadership to your team that you're willing to lay it on the line. Even if that means sacrificing some minutes or energy or foul trouble, whatever it takes, you're willing to do that because you're not going to be the reason we're not a good defensive team. And that's been, to me, an incredible transformation, and it started with the personnel acquisitions at the trading deadline with Gafford and Washington.
Tim, let's go to the Minnesota side of this thing for a second. Obviously, the day between, the discussion becomes adjustments. Tim, do you see the Timberwolves having to make adjustments or just do some things better, damn it? Which one of those things, if you can choose between?
I think there's definitely some adjustments offensively. Defensively, there's only so much you can do with your personnel in Luka Doncic. I don't know there's a whole lot there. Offensively, this was a bad balance sheet for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like, this team took 49 three-point shots. All right, to put that in perspective, they've only taken 40 once in the entire playoffs, and that's a high number for this team. They almost took 50. Their top 3 scorers, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jaden McDaniels, took 33-point shots between the 3 of them. That is exactly what Dallas was baiting them in to do. It's almost like, catnip. They dangled it in front, and they took every half-decent 3 they could get. That's exactly what Dallas wanted because they had 5 guys patrolling the paint. They did not want Anthony Edwards getting down into those gaps, taking off, getting to the rim, finishing, getting that crowd into it. They relegated him to a passive 3-point shooter off the dribble, and 12 of his 16 shots were threes. That is not the ratio they're looking for out of Anthony Edwards, out of their team. That's going to be the biggest adjustment. Don't take that first half-decent 3. Put the ball back onto the floor, get back into the lane, try to get downhill and attack, and then you can crash the offensive glass in a better position doing that rather than have 4 guys spaced out shooting 3-point shots. You're going to see a different approach out of Anthony Edwards and a different approach out of this team in that regard.
All right, I'm going to keep you on the subject of threes for a second. Tony and I watched personally from the front row as you shot a great many threes and hit a great many threes in your career. I want to go back. Yes, game 2 is tonight, but let's go back to game 1 for a second in the East and take us through Jaylen Brown's shot in that corner from getting open to the head fake to draining it.
Well, first of all, interesting play set because he started in the corner. And then he ran up to the foul line, and they made it look like he was going to set a back screen to bring Al Horford to the corner. Instead, he got up there and grabbed Horford's waist and spun around him and went right back to the corner. They thought they could create some confusion. They did it. As a result, Pascal Siakam and McConnell didn't switch it, so the pass could be made. So I thought the play design was pretty clever. Siakam got there late, but the actual mechanics of shooting, first of all, that's a tight spot to run. If people would stand down there, if you got a size, I don't know what Jaylen Brown wears. I wear a 15 shoe. There's not a lot of room in that area of the court. So you've got to be very precise that you don't step on the end line or the sideline. And the pass was perfect. So his feet didn't have to move. That's very important. If he had to move at all, he probably steps out of bounds. And then here's the last part of it. I think that's interesting. That shot is far easier for a right-handed player out of the left corner because your right hand is away from the backboard. It's out in front of the backboard. If you had to shoot that exact same shot from the left corner and you turn, your right arm is basically lined up with the backboard or slightly behind it if you're that deep in the corner. So that ball actually has to travel sort of across your body in that arc to clear the backboard. He didn't have to worry about that. You didn't have to be as precise, and as a result, he was able to get enough on that and knock it down with great concentration.
Now, we get you out of here on this, but you got to be quick because we got a time factor going on here.
Gotcha.
It's an obviously terrible loss for Indiana in game 1. What would you say to them going into game 2?
I'd say, guys, we didn't sleep after the game on Tuesday night. We didn't sleep after we watched the film session the next day. That's fine. Here's the bottom line. We played that game, most of that game, exactly to our liking in terms of style, pace, shooting, everything we wanted to do. Two things, clean up. 22 turnovers that led to 32 points. Can't happen. Take care of the basketball. You can't give a team this good that many extra opportunities. And Drew Holiday, his high game was 18 points in the playoffs prior to last night. He's not going to do that again. Let's contain him and make sure he doesn't go off like that and take care of the basketball. And I don't think they can guard us. And that's my message if I'm Rick Carlisle.
There we have it.
Thank you,
Nice,
Tim. It's
quick
wonderful
pep
to have you
talk.
on.
Gotta
Thank you.
love that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Got it,
Tim.
guys. Anytime.
ESPN coverage of tonight's Game 2 begins with NBA Countdown at 7 p.m. Eastern, so
Yes,
we know
it
where
does.
Wilbon's going to be.
Yes, it
Let's
does.
take one last break. Still to come, Connor McDavid, Wilbon's boy, and the Oilers face the Stars in tonight's Game 1.
Yeah. Rafa Nadal receives a tough draw as he tries to win the French Open for the 15th time. Wow.
So here's the big news out of what Legler said. He wears the size 15 shoe. I had the under. I did not have 15.
Well,
no.
you can't.
Tonight on SportsCenter at 6 Eastern. How the Celtics are hoping to stop.
Happy time, people. Happy 33rd birthday, Aaron Donald. Donald played his entire career with the Rams. He was drafted 13th overall in 2014 out of Pitt when the Rams were still in St. Louis. Donald started 12 games for the Rams that season and was named NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Over the course of his career, Donald was named to 10 Pro Bowls. 8 times he was first-team All-Pro. 3 times he was Defensive Player of the Year. Donald had 2 sacks on Joe Burrow in the 2021 Super Bowl the Rams won. In the 10 seasons Donald played, he had more sacks, quarterback hits, and tackles for losses than anyone else. The big news is that Donald retired this past March saying, quote, "I'm full, I'm complete. I think the passion for playing the game is no longer there," unquote.
I hear him. I believe him today. I believe he believes that today. And I will bet you right now, greens, fees, anywhere you want to play, that Aaron Donald plays this season in the NFL. And I'm just thinking about
Really?
teams that have a little money available to perhaps sign Mr. Donald. I
Really?
can think of one in Chicago. I can.
Really?
Yeah.
Everything with you is the Bears.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, Dirk Nowitzki. On this day 14 years ago, rumors were swirling that the German superstar was going to opt out of his contract with the Mavericks and become a free agent. Ultimately, Nowitzki signed a 4-year, $80 million deal with Dallas, which wound up being a good call. Nowitzki was said to be frustrated by the Mavericks' repeated losing to the Spurs in the playoffs. But in the next year, Dallas beat Miami in the NBA Finals. Nowitzki was named Finals MVP, and the victory over LeBron, Wade, and Bosh helped avenge Dallas's previous loss in the Finals to Miami with Wade and Shaq. Wilbon, is Nowitzki the greatest foreign-born player ever?
No, one of, but you got Akeem, you got Joker, you got Giannis, and Luka's coming. Not to mention you got Parker and Ginobili who got a bunch of rings. Dirk is way up there, but I can't put him ahead of those few guys I mentioned. Love Dirk.
Really? All right. Happy trails to yesterday's game for the Nationals. The Nats losing is no big surprise. They're 6 games under 500. But the big news from the game was that after Minnesota reliever Stephen Oker rode in on the bullpen cart to relieve with 2 outs in the bottom of the 5th, he tipped the cart driver, handed him a Finsky for the 30-second ride that covered 300 feet. Oker recorded the next 4 outs in a row, and he got the win. The Nats are one of 3 teams that make a bullpen cart ride available, along with Arizona and Detroit. Now, not everyone coming into the game takes a cart. Most relievers walk in. Oker said he had the 5 in his pocket all series, just waiting for a chance to get in the game. Twins manager Rocco Baldelli said, quote, "You got a tip. We like to do things right here. Treat people good," unquote.
Yeah, I don't know that a 5 is treating people good. In the 60s, and I guess before that, the cart was remember they would bring him in like in a sedan, like in a 64 Thunderbird. Remember they used to bring people in a car. Folks will not believe that. We may need video tomorrow to show I'm not crazy.
I'm very surprised that so many people don't have the carts. That only 3 teams have the carts.
People
That
just wanna
surprises
walk.
me.
Just
It's a
exercise, count
staple
your
in my
steps.
mind. Let's go to the big finish if we could.
Let's do it.
Pirates rookie Paul Skeens gave up just 1 earned over 6 against the Giants this afternoon. Your thoughts?
It's three great starts now. I mean, is this kid becoming Randy Johnson or something? I mean, people can't hit him. The Devils hired former Maple Leafs coach Sheldon Keefe. Does that make sense?
In the NHL, everybody gets fired quickly, and everybody gets rehired once or twice or 3 times. Unseeded Rafael Nadal to number 4, Alexander Zverev, I hope I pronounced that correctly, in the first round of the French Open. Wow, your thoughts?
They won the Italian Open last week. I know Nadal owns the French, but I'm going to watch that match. I want to see that. First round. The Oilers and Stars open the Western Conference Final tonight. Set the stage.
Oilers and Stars open the Western Conference Finals tonight. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. Last one, Chicago Sky at New York Liberty tonight. Who you got?
Tony, the Liberty. We're going to be ready for that game later in the summer. Later in the summer, I'll take the Sky. I don't know if I can take us tonight.
Not even actually in the summer yet, but good call. We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. Mike Faith and F&M Lacrosse, shout out.
I'm in the summer out here. I don't know what you do. I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. You can get the podcast on the app or Apple Podcasts. The Sports.
It's always summer in LA.